Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing a short Grand Swiss preview. For the podcasters, I must give you a disclaimer. I am recording this outside because it is very hot in South Africa. Spring is almost upon us, but there might be some construction nearby. So, in terms of audio for both the YouTube and, of course, the podcasters, I'm going to do my best. But if you hear it, I'm sorry. I really am. I'm trying to do it when they're a bit quieter, but there is still some banging. Anyway, we're talking about the Grand Swiss. For some players, the final stop to try and reach the candidates. It is a massive open. It is 11 rounds, and the top two players in both the open and the women's section will qualify to the candidates. Of course, there is still the Open World Cup later this year in India, where we will get three more places for the open section. Women, of course, already had their World Cup, won by Divya Deshmukh, who is in the Grand Swiss. So let's start with the women's section. I always find this section quite difficult to call because there are so many top players and you're never quite sure. I think if you look at it, there are some players that have already qualified to the candidates, so they won't be taking spots from the Grand Swiss. So players like Tan Zhongyi, who's not yet qualified, she can qualify in this tournament. You'll be looking at the likes of Mariya Muzychuk. Humpy Connery, I think, has already qualified. Leighton J has already qualified. So Vaishali Rameshbabu, of course, Prague's sister, uh, is in the event, and she will be looking to qualify. And there's a lot. Of course, Divya Deshmukh, who has already qualified, was given a wildcard entry, I think, into the Grand Swiss, so she will be playing. What's interesting about these players is when they're not taking spots because they've already qualified via the World Cup or via the Grand Prix Series in terms of the women's section, it leads to some interesting matchups because players who are attempting to qualify may not need to finish 1 and 2 if the top spots are taken. It's obviously easiest to finish 1 and 2 because then you're guaranteed. But let's say Divya Deshmukh wins the Grand Swiss. She's already qualified to the candidates. It is very possible that third place then qualifies you to the candidates. So this will be something to watch out for where players are going to have to watch who is already qualified to the candidates. I think there are 6 players or 5 players already in the women's candidates qualified. 3 from the World Cup, 2 from the Grand Prix Series, and then there'll be 1 for the overall events, like the FIDE circuit type of thing. So there are already 5 players qualified. I think 3 or 4 of them are in the event. Humpy Connery, Divya Deshmukh, Leighton J. I think Tan Zhongyi actually has qualified, so I must remark on my previous statement. Yes, she qualified 3rd in the World Cup, if I remember correctly now. So it is a very interesting field. You'll look to some of the players like Mariya Muzychuk, if she hasn't qualified already, and Vaishali. They will probably be my 2 favorites, but favorites loosely. But moving on to the open section, I think this is a lot harder to call. Last year, or in the previous cycle, I think the top 2 were Hikaru Nakamura and Vidit Gujrathi. Now this Grand Swiss does not have Magnus Carlsen, does not have Fabiano Caruana, does not have Hikaru Nakamura, the top 3 rated players in the world. It does have the classical World Champion Gukesh. Now obviously he won't be taking a spot for the candidates because he's the World Champion. Jan Nepomniachtchi is in it. He of course has not yet qualified and will be looking to qualify. He's got 2 more chances. He's got the Grand Swiss, and if it doesn't go well here, he's got the World Cup. Pragdananda Rameshbabu as well. He currently leads the FIDE circuit for 2025. If he wins the circuit, that will be his qualification path. So the Grand Swiss is not do or die for him, neither is the World Cup, as he currently leads the circuit. And a dog begins to bark outside. Anyway, so Jan Nepomniachtchi looking to qualify. Ali Reza Firouzja as well will be one of the players to look at, not yet qualified. He's got the Grand Swiss and he's got the World Cup. Now the World Cup, you do not want to rely on that. That is an incredibly difficult tournament to win. The Grand Swiss is no easier. It's 11 rounds, and it's the top 2 players playing in a Swiss scoring system. So it is very challenging because you will have to finish on like a Title Tuesday score, like 9 out of 10, 9.5, potentially even 10 out of 11, 10.5 out of 11. So you've got to be near perfect. You've got to be consistently winning. So we're also looking at then who's in really good form, and you've got to look at Levan Aronian. He has played his last few tournaments have been phenomenal. He won the freestyle in Las Vegas, went to the Esports World Cup, had a decent showing there. I think reached some of the latter stages. Went and played the Singfield Cup. That's where maybe some of his forms dipped. I wouldn't say dipped, cooled a little bit, but he is still carrying lots of momentum. Of course, Wesley So just won the Singfield Cup. I think he's playing. We've got Vladimir Fedoseev, perennial top 20 player. Will he qualify? So you've got a lot of top guys in there. Praggnanandhaa, of course, is in there. Arjun Erigaisi. Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. If there was a guy who was going to go in on a tear and win 10 games in a row, it could very well be big Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. So it is a very, very interesting tournament. It's 11 rounds. They play 6, then there's a rest day, and then they play 5. They're great times for me because they start at like 1 p.m. or something like that, 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. here in South Africa. So I'll be able to do recaps every day. For those of you on YouTube, please help us reach the subscription goal for YouTube. I'd love to get it by my 21st birthday. I'm almost 20, so that gives us, a little over 365 days. But it's an interesting tournament, and what will be also one of the interesting narratives going into this tournament is Gukesh. He had a really rough Singfield Cup. That was his latest tournament. He's had mixed results in 2025. I mean, if you watch the video I did about Gukesh and his overall reign, that may even have been put as a podcast as well. I'm not entirely sure. It's interesting, and there are lots of questions as him as world champion. So if he could go to the Grand Swiss and finish with like 9 out of 11 undefeated, that would be great. Every time he loses, it's going to be a big story. But what's also interesting is he is mixing up with potentially whoever is going to play the World Championship match. If he plays Prague, which he has done several times this year already, and Prague wins, that could be the future World Championship match if Prague qualifies to the candidates. It looks like he's all set to do so. He has a dominant lead in the circuit. He seems to be in good form and could very well be one of the top contenders for this. What happens if he plays Jan Nepomniachtchi? And Jan Nepomniachtchi wins the candidates for a third time in 4 years, or in 4 cycles. That could be interesting. Jan Nepomniachtchi is not going away. He still wants to be classical world champion. Of course, he's not playing Hikaru Nakamura. Hikaru Nakamura is just finishing off the Louisiana State Championship as he seeks to qualify by rating. What that means is Hikaru is all but certain to get the rating spot. So the remaining players have got the Grand Swiss, which gives you 2 spots for the top 2, and 3 World Cup spots. Now in the World Cup, anything can happen. We saw that with the women's. IM Divya Deshmukh, now GM, won the whole thing. In the last World Cup, Nijat Abbasov finished 4th place. It was incredible. Vincent Geimer is someone that we will be looking at in these 2 events as well. He's had a very good year in terms of rating, in terms of performances in tournaments. He will be there and thereabouts. Fabiano Caruana is already qualified. I don't think he's playing this event, so he's not someone we need to talk about in relation to the Grand Swiss. But it's interesting. It's a very interesting tournament. I know I'm going back and forth, and maybe this is terrible audio content, but the Grand Swiss, I think the Grand Swiss and the World Cup, I will do a video when the World Cup comes out in terms of previewing it, but there are some of my favorite tournaments because players have to play for a win. You have to get that whole point. Someone like Anish Giri, who would love to qualify for the candidates again. I don't want to say he's known as a draw specialist, but even in his own commentary, he finds ways to draw games. Now that's a strength when you're kind of in a worse position, which you definitely need. You cannot afford losses in the Grand Swiss, particularly early on, because remember, it'll be a Swiss-style tournament, so some of the top-rated players will be drawn against some of the lower-rated players. I mean, they're all GMs, but, a 2700 playing a 2500, you always back the 2700 or the Super GMs. You will look for them to quickly announce themselves. So Anish Giri will have to get off to a good start if he wants to qualify. We've spoken about Levan Aronian, Praggnanandhaa, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, a lot of contenders, but it could be someone we haven't spoken about. So I'd love for you to get in touch in the comment sections on Twitter, on Instagram. Get in touch. Tell me what you think about the Grand Swiss. And do you think it's a valuable asset in terms of the candidates? I think it is. I think it definitely favors the cycle. It lasts a little under 2 weeks, 11 rounds. It is a grueling tournament for the players. Let's not take that into disregard. But it is a very interesting tournament. It requires wins, which the candidates itself requires you to win, and then you must win a one-on-one match with someone. So there is a lot of winning involved, which is great because there are times when you can watch. I don't want to say Mickey Mouse tournaments, but where players, if they're not having to win, they are happy to take draws. That is not possible in the Grand Swiss. It might be possible in the last few rounds, but then you've narrowed down the players who will want to win and play spoiler. Um, and the World Cup, of course, you have to win. So it's interesting. It's always interesting. I love using that phrase. Thank you, Mr. Kravnik. But what do you think about the Grand Swiss? I love the tournament. I'm excited for it to begin tomorrow. But please tell me what you think. Tell me what you think of this podcast slash preview. I went around in circles quite a bit, but it's an exciting tournament. It really, really is. Maybe I haven't conveyed that enough. I'm really excited. I think both sections are quite unpredictable without some of the top guns being there. Jun Jun's not there, Magnus Carlsen, Fabiana Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura. I don't think Leighton J is playing. I'm not sure. I don't see her name down, but she might be playing. So it's open to a lot of people. And there are, of course, people who are already qualified to the candidates who could be playing the role of spoilers and ruining people's dreams and creating interesting scenarios. And of course, with Gukesh there's always a narrative around him, and potentially he will be facing off against potentially his next World Championship challenger. Otherwise, I will see you soon.